according to her, she was raised by a very stern grandmother who couldn't even conceive of showing her affection, but often would whip her until she bled. And a grandfather who was really scary, who had dementia, who would come and choke her grandmother in the night, and that they had to rely on the blind cousin who lived down the road to come and help them in the middle of the night. And so she has painted a really grim picture of her childhood. She has said that she didn't have any dolls or toys or anything, and that she was reduced to having 2 pet cockroaches so that she might have something to play with. Now, we can hope for a rebuttal from Kitty Kelly's book, because cousins have come out to say that they are astounded that this is the projected picture of her youth, and that this nonsense of her having to play with a couple of pet cockroaches in lieu of a doll is just absolute ridiculousness. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise, and today we're going to be doing an episode about Oprah Winfrey, but I'm going to be telling you all the things I was able to find out about her, which are very sparse. And that's going to lead me into the introduction of the fact that, despite my better judgment, I will be reading another book to us about Oprah. Because as I was searching for information about Oprah Winfrey, when I tell you that the information on the internet is so scrubbed or so confused that it made me feel like this person is the greater con woman than I initially gave her credit for. The way the internet has been cleansed of the reality of who Oprah Winfrey is startles me. There is no description, there is no even air date of certain episodes that I remember seeing growing up that you just now can't find because they were so controversial or rude or hateful or exploitative. The effort that has gone into preserving the reputation of Oprah is so crazy to me that I just threw my hands up and thought, we got to go back the old school way. We have to read a book. So at the end of the information that I was able to find, I came to the conclusion that I'd have to turn to Kitty Kelly's biography about Oprah that came out in 2010. Now, it's not a new biography. Obviously, 2010 was 16 years ago. However, she interviewed 850 people. And what I'm starting to realize as all these Epstein files and things are coming out, a lot of the rumors about people that were discredited in the day, though Kitty Kelly's book was not discredited, but a lot of the things that seemed too salacious to believe 15 years ago are now becoming startling realities for all of us. But if we rely on the internet, which can be cleaned by companies such as the one that Savannah Guthrie's husband is a partner in, if we rely on the internet to tell us what happened in our own history, we will be as befuddled as the people in 1984. You guys remember how in 1984, the book written by George Orwell, not the actual year, the protagonist in that book works at a place that scrubs history and rewrites the history of the people so that whenever any detail comes out that is inconvenient, it's his job to scrub it, clean it, rewrite, and reestablish a new narrative. That's what I feel like the internet is becoming. And as I searched in vain for certain episodes that I remember seeing with my own eyes and no record of it can be found, I just became so frustrated, so angry, so annoyed that I have been sold a narrative about a person who is clearly a con woman. So I just want to talk about some of the things that I could find and lead us into the reason why we need to read another book. Now, I will just say this before I even begin. There was a part of me that had completely written off doing books on this channel again because erroneously, I came to believe that reading books was content that people wanted. And I came to that false idea because the first 2 books that I read were about Harry and Meghan, and being new to the very concept of discussing Harry and Meghan, I didn't realize what a popular subject that is on YouTube and basically on all of the internet. So I had relative success reading books to people, and I thought, oh, this is something people want. But then I realized very quickly that it isn't. And because now that I make videos as my living, I don't have the luxury of just choosing whatever it is that I want to do. Now I have to think about, okay, but what will people watch? And if it was up to me, all I'd do all day is read books to you guys. But I've been burned repeatedly in thinking that people wanted me to read to them. And I know there is a small group of us who do enjoy that content. But I think the majority of people either don't like the format or I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it's not something that everyone's like, oh, I got to click on that, right? And so I've had to sort of readjust what it is I want to do. But as I searched in vain for the facts about Oprah, facts I know to be true because I saw with my own eyes, I realized the only way we're going to find out about who Oprah was is to go to a unauthorized biography, to go and appeal to this Kitty Kelly who interviewed 850 people to find the real story and the real eyewitness accounts to Oprah Winfrey's growing up experience. So I want to talk today about the things that I was able to find out, like I said, and sort of introduce to you all the questions that I had after searching for the answers, to sort of explain why a chapter by chapter read of Kitty's book is the only way we're going to actually know the truth about Oprah. Because if this world had its way, you would not know who Oprah really is. And she has enough money to pay for the fact that you will never find out who she is. Not today on this channel, okay? But let's go through some of the more troubling facts that are still out there. Some of the more troubling questions that still linger about Oprah and the reason why we need this book. Okay, starting with her childhood, it's all just very questionable. Everybody knows that Oprah is a rags to riches story, that she came from utter obscurity, that according to her, she was raised by a very stern grandmother who couldn't even conceive of showing her affection, but often would whip her until she bled. And a grandfather who was really scary, who had dementia, who would come and choke her grandmother in the night, and that they had to rely on the blind cousin who lived down the road to come and help them in the middle of the night. And so she has painted a really grim picture of her childhood. She has said that she didn't have any dolls or toys or anything, and that she was reduced to having 2 pet cockroaches so that she might have something to play with. I mean, when I tell you that she has painted the grimmest of pictures, it's really astounding. We can hope for a rebuttal from Kitty Kelly's book, because cousins have come out to say that they are astounded that this is the projected picture of her youth. Now, it's hard to know about what these cousins say. The cousins say that Oprah was spoiled and that she had a great life, and that this nonsense of her having to play with a couple of pet cockroaches in lieu of a doll is just absolute ridiculousness, that she didn't grow up in filth and cockroaches with continual beatings. Now, I don't know about the squalid conditions that Oprah has discussed. You know, she talks about living in a house that didn't even have running water. But I have family members on my husband's side who grew up without running water in their homes, from rural Alabama. So it's not like inconceivable to me that somebody could live in a home, in the last century that didn't have running water. It's unusual, but it's not completely beyond the scope of believability. But leaving aside the idea that she was raised by an abusive grandmother with cockroaches for pets, Oprah was packed off to go live with her mother at about the age of 6. But her mother was not really interested in being a mom anyway. I mean, that's why she'd left the child in the care of her grandparents. She had Oprah when she was a teenager herself, by a guy who was in the military, and according to Oprah, didn't even know anything about her until her mother had written to the father and said, "Hey, Vernon, you have a kid, so I'm going to need some child support." But Oprah's mother had left her in the care of the grandparents and then moved to Wisconsin. At the age of 6, Oprah is sent to go live with her mom in Wisconsin. Her mom cannot handle. And so she sends Oprah for a year to go live with her father. Now, in a really sort of rare interview with Vernon, her dad, he claims that he is the one who raised Oprah to be all that she is now. And that when she came to him at the age of 7, he was her caretaker, and that he had taken care of her until, she went off basically to Chicago to live her great dreams as a broadcaster. And that's kind of when his influence ended, he says. But other records show that that's not really the case. She stayed with him for about a year in Nashville and then was packed back off to her mom. But after stealing from her mom numerous times, her mom just threw up her hands and was like, "I can't. You are a complete menace. Get away from me." And sent her to live with her father, where, and I will not dispute this because I have zero reason to believe that this wasn't what was happening, Oprah proceeded to continually be abused by relatives. Now, she says she was abused by relatives from the age of 9. By the age of 14, she was giving birth to her uncle's child. When she was 14, so the story goes, she gave birth to a baby prematurely, and the baby died in the hospital. That's horrifically tragic. And I believe that really happened because Oprah tried to quiet this for years. She didn't want anybody to know. And of course, you know that Oprah's star had risen by the 80s. And so she was content for people to think that she had lived a pretty chaste lifestyle. But in 1990, a relative sold to a tabloid this secret pregnancy that she'd had when she was 14, and she was devastated about it. She had not wanted people to know this about her. She felt like it would make her look like she had been like this tawdry girl running around. But I'm like, you've already let us know that you were in the throes of sexual abuse and that there were all of these predatory people who were preying on you. So I don't know why she would feel that she can tell us that everyone was preying on her, but then a subsequent pregnancy wouldn't also elicit enormous sympathy from an audience who she'd already tested on when she said, hey, by the way, I was sexually abused as a child. Why would all of us then jump on her and be like, oh, you had a baby by this predator? That's your fault. I mean, I don't understand the lapse in judgment here. Why would she trust us with the information that she had been abused as a child, but then not imagine that our sympathies would be even more enormous were we led into believe that she'd had a child? I'll tell you where I feel like the narrative breaks down for me is at what happened with the child. To me, her not wanting people to know that she'd had a child when she was 14 and the child died, like, this is a person who wants to believe that she came from the worst circumstances of all time. Wouldn't having a baby at 14 and the child dying be kind of the feather in the cap you've been telling us? Right? I mean, it seems like, why would you leave out that tidbit? That's horrific and tragic and horrible. And you want us to believe your childhood was horrific, tragic, and horrible because you have risen from the ashes, have you not? Okay, but let's just put aside the fact that what she says is, and what she confirms that this relative said is that she had a baby when she was 14. And according to everything I've ever read, the baby went on to die. Some corners of the internet suggest the baby was adopted and that she didn't want to talk about it because she didn't want this baby to come find her. That seems potentially true because Oprah has talked about how she never wanted kids because she didn't think she'd be a good mother. She has specifically said that she thinks that her children would suffer under her hand. And she had been asked many times about why she hasn't had children. And in a Hollywood Reporter interview, these are her exact words.
The article, Oprah, who at 14 gave birth to a baby who only lived for a few weeks, says if I had kids, my kids would hate me because something would have had to suffer and it would have probably been them. Oprah also says while her best friend had childhood dreams of having kids, I was having daydreams about how I could be Martin Luther King.
So I can imagine the concept, the fear of somebody showing up on her doorstep as potentially being her child. She's not looking for that. We'll talk later about how she tried to throw a crumb of kindness to this boy who crossed paths with her and how she basically packed him off to a boarding school that he was completely ill-prepared for and then was resentful when he, wasn't able to accomplish the task of graduating. We'll talk about that later. But her forays into maternity have been pitiful at best. Her school, we'll talk about that later. So I can imagine that she was always sort of grateful that this child that she had didn't really burden her in life. Because pretty early on, she knew what she wanted to be. And it was not just to live a low-down life that she'd been born into. She says that she, without necessarily saying it in complete words, she had the it factor. And she planned on utilizing the it factor to the nth degree. Now, in more startling and confusing circumstances, Oprah went on to win 2 beauty pageants as a young teenager. She was 17 years old, and in 1971/1972, she was interested in the pageant circle. So she won this pageant called Miss Fire Prevention. This was the day and age when there was a beauty pageant for literally everything. This beauty pageant was put on by a local news station. But this is where it all breaks down for me as far as what I can understand what happened next. Okay, first of all, doing any research about the 2 beauty pageants that Oprah won is exceedingly difficult because the pictures of which beauty pageant are completely jumbled up. It's known that Oprah won Miss Black Tennessee. What's lesser known is that she won this Miss Fire Prevention, which jettisoned her career. But if you look up her winning this Black Tennessee pageant, you'll consistently find pictures of her at this other pageant where she was Miss Fire Prevention. Now, Where I don't understand about this is that supposedly this specific news station that she goes on to work for later discovered her at this pageant. And that she gave an answer that was just so cunning, according to them. They couldn't help but put her on the air. Now, all the other girls at this pageant, when asked what they wanted to do with their lives, gave answers like, I want to be a nurse. I want to be a preschool teacher. And she said, I want to be the next Barbara Walters. Well, this just apparently stunned the crowd. And so when she went to go collect her prize at the radio station that had sponsored this event, they gave her a job right then and there. And they were like, we want you to come and, give the news on the radio. Okay. But see, this is why I don't understand what happened here. And this is where I could not find any information. Let's look at this picture. All of these girls are wearing sashes that have the initials or the call sign of all these different radio stations, right? Look at all these girls. And look at Oprah. And she is wearing the name of the radio station that was sponsoring the event that subsequently gave her a job out of nowhere. That doesn't make any sense to me. They're trying to make Oprah seem like, with no help whatsoever except for the exceptional skills she possessed, she took this life by the throat and just sort of manifested everything she wanted. Certainly, Oprah would love you to think that she manifested everything she had with her love of the law of attraction, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But how is it that you're already wearing the name of the radio station that inexplicably but wonderfully gave you a job with zero broadcasting in your past? Now, she was going to college for broadcasting, so you could say that she certainly had interest and she was working towards that goal. But that's why I believe that she was already representing this station in this contest. Explain to me why everybody's wearing the name of a different station on their sash. You're representing something already. She was already representing this news station. It's not like they discovered her at Miss Fire Prevention. Okay, but then she goes on to win Miss Black Tennessee in 1972. Okay. I mean, here's the thing. I think Oprah is an attractive person, but I don't know if she's I don't know that it's beauty pageant beauty. I find that to be kind of a surprising situation, especially because her whole life, even when she got on network television at the very beginning, wasn't like a stunning beauty. I don't think anybody would ever take from Oprah the fact that she is good at what she does and she can talk and she can get other people to talk and she's good at seeming relatable and she's good at finding an interesting story. So she's certainly gifted at this skill set that she's cultivated her whole life. But as a stunning beauty, a pageant winner, that seems a bit of a leap in logic, but we'll just go with it, okay? She won Miss Black Tennessee with no intervention. Then she goes on from winning this inexplicable award so that she can start broadcasting the news on the radio. She then goes on to television, and then she gets a chance to go to Baltimore, where she's supposed to be reading the news, but then she's kind of downgraded in Baltimore to doing a talk show. But that's actually where she finds that she's really thriving at being a talk show host. And this demotion turns out to really be a blessing in disguise. And from thence, she goes on to Chicago, where she does the Oprah Winfrey Show, and then she blows up. And she is an immediate success. And this overnight success, honestly, in the early years of Oprah's show, she did a lot of shows with families who were in some pretty exceptionally bad situations. We talked on this show about that clip that circulates around, I see this clip every month of Oprah interviewing this Jewish family, and this family was practicing Satanism and having babies and sacrificing these babies, et cetera, et cetera.
Gas was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree. It's gone back to 1700.
Does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
This clip, it doesn't surprise me that this is going around, because there's lots of people who find anti-Semitism to be very helpful. So if they can continue to get you to believe and get so whipped up with this brain rot idea that the Jews are the reason that everything's a problem, and be like, and look at this clip of Oprah. She was talking about those Jewish baby eaters a minute ago. If that the fact that this clip has survived surprises me not a little, because it helps whatever narrative is destroying people's brain. And so that clip's been going around and being used by nefarious forces. But there's a lot of episodes that she did where she was just like flat out exploiting people. And before she did the explosive interview with Michael Jackson, that gave her a lot of blowback, but a lot of eyes on her show, because like millions of people watched the Michael Jackson interview. Before that ever came out, she was doing a lot of just sort of exploitative content of people in bad situations, kind of like pulling back the curtain on, have you got any idea that this is going on? And it was like kind of must-see TV. Now, that's not to say that she was exploiting people and then kind of gave it up when she got famous. No, her bread and butter was to take people's worst moments and then milk them for TV. I mean, that is what the Oprah show was, sprinkled in later with a lot of self-help foolishness. And we'll get on to her sickness with the gurus in a minute. But this is where I really had a hard time finding some of the evidence of shows that I know happened. For example, there was one specific show that she did with these brothers from Mexico. The whole family has this genetic disorder which creates hair all over the body. Now, this is a phenomenon that has been documented for centuries. In fact, did you know that Beauty and the Beast was based on a true story of a man who had this specific disease? And the fact that he was brought from the Caribbean to be sort of a sideshow in the French palace, and that he was wed to a woman. And that is the original story of Beauty and the Beast. So people with this condition have been sort of ostracized and mocked and laughed at for centuries. To Oprah's credit, she didn't find people who didn't want to talk about their situation. I mean, these people have won awards in the Guinness Book of World Records for I don't know what, but I've seen these people many times. They're not like hiding away in the shadows, cringing, not wanting people to see them. Like, they're fine. And may I just say, the hair is very luxurious and soft looking. But this is like bad TV. I mean, this is sort of like a sideshow sort of thing. Like, a lot of the TV she did had like shock factor to it. You can't even find that she interviewed these brothers, by the way. I could not find one picture. And I remember this vividly because I saw this episode as a kid and I didn't realize that anyone could have a disorder like this. And I was like, I was pretty shocked. So it stuck in my mind. It lodged in my mind as a fact. And the only thing I ever found was this one sentence. And by the way, when I tell you about the lies that AI would bring me, when you Google something and like AI pops at the top and is like, let me tell you, and it's like blatantly lying to you. Because if you don't put in the exact right words, it will just tell you something that's not even true. It told me repeatedly that Oprah had never had a child when she was 14, but very readily you can find that she did. So don't believe anything that AI says to you. But even AI admitted that she had done a show, that she did interview these brothers. This is the one line I could find in all of the internet that admitted that she had interviewed these brothers. But there's no date, there's no time when she did. You cannot find a picture, not a still shot, nothing. Now, maybe I'm just really bad at searching the internet, which is possible, because I'm not like really in the business of trying to find out, what do the darkest corners of the internet say? So maybe you guys have better skills and you know better how to find things that you can't find. I wasn't searching like every Reddit board out there. I wasn't like, where's the Wayback Machine? So it's possible. I think on Rumble, you can find some of these episodes that I could not find. Somebody sent me a link later because I was posting about this yesterday on Instagram being like, what the heck, you guys, what's going on around here? I was real flustered and frustrated. I took yesterday off to do a deep dive into Oprah and I was like, what the heck? I can't find anything. But then I'll tell you what you can find. And this to me was like super exploitative. Remember that woman who got her face torn off because she was trying to help a neighbor get her gorilla back into the house and the gorilla turned on this poor woman and ripped her face off? Do you guys remember when Oprah interviewed her? And then the lady did say Oprah could take her hat off. So I'm not saying that Oprah is doing things with these people that they're not agreeing to. Like, the brothers conceded to be on the show. They know what they look like and they're not ashamed of it. So I don't mean to say like Oprah was so mean. It's just that I know that Oprah knows what's going to get eyes. And I don't know if like looking at people who are disfigured or who have genetic disorders that make them look different than others is really worthy of television. And I understand like Oprah's kind of in a hard spot because it is an interesting story about the woman who got her face ripped off. And if the woman wants to take off her hat, who is Oprah to be like, oh, no, you're heinous. We don't want to look at that. You're hideous. So in some ways, what is she supposed to do but accept the invitation to help the woman off with her hat?
You could take the hat off.
Oh, the hat comes off.
Yep.
Okay, okay. All right. All right. So the veil is lifted. You know, many people around the world want to get a picture of you. You're aware of that, right?
It just feels like, why are we doing these interviews that really don't have anything to do with anything other than the fact that we all want to gawk at this person who has a really unfortunate and terrible circumstance happening to her? I mean, even I am like, do I even show that clip? Because at the same time, this woman is still a child of God, whether she's got a face or not. You know, if I deny you the clip, I'm saying this lady's too horrible to even look at, so don't look at her. But if I show the clip, am I not just like Oprah? You know, but my whole point in all of this is just like, Oprah was finding the cases that involved people's complete misfortune, or the fact that they were very different from others. Or in the case of like the Jewish Satanists, I don't think it's because Oprah so cared about exposing Satanism. It's just a really shocking story. And so shock and awe were what it was all about. But I mean, she didn't just do this with the nobodies of the world. Even with celebrities, she would have them on and then she would embarrass them. Obviously, the most infamous is when she was interviewing Michael Jackson.
You are not taking anything to change the color of your skin.
Oh, God, no.
You did not purposely.
We're trying to control it, and using makeup evens it out because it makes blotches on the skin, and I have to even out my skin. But you know what's funny? Why is that so important? You know, about what inspired him to become who he is, the anatomy of his craftsmanship, not about who he went out with last night or why he decided to sit out in the sun so long. What's wrong with, I mean, that's what's important to me.
How much plastic surgery have you had?
And she was asking him, you know, why are you so interested in kids? And are you a virgin? And all of these questions, like the questions about him and the kids, that wasn't really a conversation that was being had as much at that time. It would much later become a huge controversial subject. But at the time, it was basically rumors that she'd heard, and she started questioning him. And, you know, I don't know all the things that Michael Jackson was into. I really don't. It's never been proven that he was hurting kids. He seems like a very troubled person, obviously. But she was asking him things at a time when those questions weren't even really fodder for discussion. She kind of introduced all these questions about him. And after he died, she did this long expose on Neverland, which the family really didn't appreciate. And to me, this is exactly what a con woman would do. Because see, Oprah and her really problematic relationship with people like Epstein and Ghislaine and Harvey Weinstein, Diddy. You know, she's got all of these really problematic relationships with really weird people who are up to some sexual deviance. But she wants to cloak herself in innocence by questioning people like Michael Jackson, by doing an expose on Neverland after he's dead and can't answer for himself. And it's like, that's exactly what you would do. You want us to believe you're innocent, so you try to expose someone who you know there isn't grave evidence against, so that no one will come knocking and ask, well, why don't you care about all these other things? And she can be like, I do care. Don't you remember the Neverland documentary? I do care about the kids. I tried to expose it. I don't know, Oprah. Are you really that worried? You know, if you want some hard evidence, any number of these other friends of yours, I mean, we could all be choked with the receipts that could be brought, you know? But no, she's just way too intent that she should dig around in a place where she's probably not going to find a plethora of information. But then, of course, there is that notorious interview that she did where she tried to force someone to come out about their sexuality when they weren't prepared to have that conversation.
And being like typecasting people forever saying, are you not? Is he, honey? I don't know.
Girl, you changed just in the middle of that sentence. I don't know. I'm telling you.
So rude, especially considering the fact that Oprah's own personal life has been riddled with questions about what her sexuality is. What is she? You know, she's been with the same guy for years and years and years, and yet rumors of lesbian trysts have followed her for decades, even in her youth. That'll be covered in Kitty Kelly's book. But for her to try to expose somebody else is insane, considering the fact that she has never accepted any questions about her own sexuality because it's not really anybody's business. I don't need to know what Oprah's sexuality is. But she didn't need to be asking Michael Jackson, are you a virgin? Or asking this other guest, so where exactly do you stand? I mean, people have questions about you. How is that progressing the conversation or the interview? All you've done is embarrass your guest and cause the other guy to have to jump in for him. And then we have the infamous time when she told Cindy Crawford to stand up and show off her body. And Cindy Crawford was upset because she said that she felt like she was in a slave market and everyone was looking at her body. Now, this is why I don't really have a lot of pity for that. Cindy Crawford was in that famous Pepsi commercial, like the Super Bowl commercial. It's got those two boys watching her while she gets a drink. And if you don't want people to look at your body, why would you agree to be in that situation? Like, her putting her body on display for everybody's appreciation is kind of her bread and butter. So for Oprah Winfrey to be coming out and being like, oh, look at her, she is beautiful, that girl has a body. Maybe Oprah thought she was being complimentary. I mean, Oprah has struggled with her weight for years. And as somebody who has also yo-yoed my whole life, I only mean it as a compliment if I call you thin, because that's my goal my whole life. And I'm sure that Oprah thought it was like a great compliment because, you know, she's been insecure about her weight for the majority of her life. Not since she discovered Ozempic, but, you know, for the majority of her life, Oprah was going up and down. And I'm sure she just thought she was being complimentary. So that's what I'm saying. Like these examples of things that we see Oprah doing, say like with the woman whose face had been, pulled off, or with Cindy Crawford being like, stand up, you've got a great body. It's like, okay, maybe not the best thing you've ever done, but there's certainly ways to defend the actions. And those are the things that you can see online. Even the things that are more negative, like some of her persistent questions to Michael Jackson, those have been allowed to live because a lot of other people have questioned Michael Jackson. You know, should she have asked that guy about his sexuality? No, but you could also be like, hey, she's just trying to give him the freedom to express himself. You know, like there's 1,000 different ways to try to defend what has been left on the internet for our eyes. But taken as a collective whole, some of the things she was doing on her show are exemplary of a person who is going to do anything for ratings. Consider the way she threw her relationship with Monique under the bus. Now, you'll recall that Monique and Oprah had a working relationship, specifically at the time when this one questionable interview came out, because Monique and Oprah had been working together on the movie Precious. Oprah had funded that movie and been a producer on it, I believe. And so she and Monique had a relationship. And Oprah had an opportunity to interview Monique's brother. Now, Monique has a very acrimonious relationship with her family. She's not big fans of any of them because her brother abused her as a child. And so this brother, who is very charming, even according to Monique, and is able to talk himself into anything or talk himself out of getting in trouble for anything, had said to Oprah, I want to be on your show because Monique says that I took advantage of her and she's not lying, but I'm reformed now, and I would love to give parents an opportunity to learn how to spot a abuser in their midst. Well, isn't that rather generous of him? He wants to use himself as an example of what to look out for so that your kids don't get assaulted by a relative, a sibling no less. So Oprah had asked Monique, hey, can I have your brother on? He's going to be so helpful. I mean, the parents need to know what to look for. Monique's like, I mean, okay, I don't want any part of it, but sure. The brother comes on, but not only does the brother come on, the whole family is invited for this kind of come to Jesus struggle session about the abuse that Monique suffered. It was not, hey, here are 5 things to look out for the abuser in your midst, as had been billed to Monique. It was, let's all talk about Monique, who was not there, by the way. And Monique's mother denied anything having happened. Her baby boy would never do such, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it just kind of like reopened the wound and re-traumatized Monique. So she would have none of it with Oprah. And that is the kind of person that Oprah is. The kind of person that would ask for your permission under false pretense and then whatever's going to make better TV. She'll take that option. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the gurus that she was having on her show, because this is really what floors me. Okay, so Oprah considers herself to be very intelligent, which is why she had this whole book club for the longest, because she thinks of herself as a reader and somebody who thinks very deeply about things and somebody who's very intelligent. And I'm not saying that she doesn't have a certain worldly intelligence, but a lot of the times that she was suggesting that we should read certain books, they were always books that were, they were page turners for sure, but like great literature of our day, I don't know about all that. But at the time when she was doing her book club, if you could get the Oprah book club stamp, that book would fly off the shelves. And of course, there was the unfortunate episode when she asked, I think his name was James Frey or James Fry, I can't exactly remember, but he wrote A Million Little Pieces. It was a memoir that was complete and total bunk. Trash from page 1 to page whatever. It was just like all lies, all foolishness. And she'd promoted that book extensively. He'd sold many, many copies. And then she found out it was all lies, which she could have easily done. And you know what I think? I think she loved it. Because, by the way, she has cavorted with people who are major liars consistently. And never did she think she had to bring them back on TV for a public humiliation. But for this particular author, she brings him on. She rakes him up one side and down the other, rolls him around in hot coals. The audience is booing, hissing, screaming. And, he's never worked again a day in his life. And yet she does not seem that same treatment ought to be given to some of these gurus that she's promoted extensively. Is that she has associated with some of the worst thinking known to man. And yet she doesn't never once has she ever decided to bring back some of these authors, some of these self-help gurus back on to rake them up and down and through the coals. As you know, Oprah was hugely influential in 2006 in bringing to the masses the broken concepts that were given to us in first the movie and then the book, The Secret. And these concepts, which have been around for like 150 years, originally it was called New Thinking, but now it's called the Law of Attraction because somehow that makes it more scientific, so that makes it true. These concepts that she was promoting said that if you think it, you can make it happen. The law of attraction posits that the entire world is based off of frequencies. And what you've got to do is get yourself sort of communing with a positive frequency. And that every negative thought you have puts you into sort of a negative vibration. But the positive vibrations, the positive thoughts will put you into positive vibrations. And so that if you want something to happen, all you have to do is sort of link up with these positive vibrations and then you can manifest everything you ever wanted. There's an enormous amount of control that is put into your hands with this philosophy that basically there's nothing that you can ever want that isn't yours. All you have to do is want it bad enough. But see, the infallibility of this concept is so extreme because if you just aren't getting what you want, it's because you don't believe hard enough or you're thinking too much about it. That's another thing. You are actively encouraged to deny logic when it comes to the law of attraction. And they use all kinds of words that sound sciencey, like the law of attraction, quantum thinking, all of these terms that use scientific words to make you feel like there's something about this that is true. All of these quote unquote scientists that have tried to do studies to prove the reliability of this concept, it's all bunk, it's all trash. None of these studies can be duplicated in any context, though other scientists have tried. If it was just a philosophy of don't sit around and talk bad about yourself because that's not productive. Okay, I think we can all get behind that concept. Going through life being more positive about things is good common sense, But where it starts to break down is that the law of attraction also says that if anything bad happens to you, you are a co-author in that. Well, what does that even mean? I'm a co-author in my own defeat. So the child who starves to death because they weren't able to get enough to eat, because their family is poor and they have nothing, that child is a co-author in their own death. Taken to the final conclusion. But of course, you are required not to consider logic. Otherwise, this won't work. And this is the perfect avenue. This is the perfect concept for any con man because you can never take them to court over all the losses that you've suffered under their teachings. These people will tell you that you can cure cancer yourself. In the video, The Secret, that sort of relaunched this movement in 2006, there's a woman who claims that she cured her breast cancer with no radiation, no chemotherapy, but she just healed herself because she thought positively about it. The woman died in 2014 of breast cancer. And there's not one single documented instance of somebody's true healing because they thought positive things about it. But Oprah has repeatedly talked about the law of attraction. She has platformed different authors who have written about this, extensively platformed these people. People know about The Secret because of Oprah, and she's constantly talking about how she uses this in her own life. But if only that was the only junk thought she'd ever platformed on her show, repeatedly through different authors and on many, 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 many episodes. She also did this whole episode about this guy, and like multiple episodes, about this guy named John of God. That's what he calls himself. And he's this Brazilian con man who claims that if you come to him, he can heal you. But you guys, she had an interview with him in 2011. In 2010, he had been charged with sexually abusing some of these people who had come to him for help. So it wasn't like old news that was hard to find. She just didn't want to. And I have zero idea why she'd want to platform this guy at all. Because this guy, his methods of spiritual healing include shoving scissors up people's nose and stabbing them in the eye with scalpels. 60 Minutes Australia did a whole thing about this guy. And he is the greatest con man. First of all, he sits in a throne and quote unquote receives people and blesses them. And if you come to him for healing, like there's these long lines of people who are obviously at the end of their rope, desperate for anything, just so hopeful that he can help them. And you walk past him, he doesn't even make eye contact with you. He kind of like touches your hand and then that's it. And if you do get to spend any longer with him, he's shoving scissors up your nose and stabbing you in the eye with a scalpel. To do what, I ask you? He is under the influence of an entity. He will openly say that. And then after you have an opportunity to have the scissors up your nose, a scalpel in your eye, and be breathed on by a demon, you are then welcome to go over to the pharmacy.
It sells one thing: blessed herbal pills, only available via John of God prescription, apparently. They're $25 a bottle and would make Mr. Faria about $40,000 a day. That's more than $14 million a year, which are nothing more than passion flower herbs.
Makes the whole thing a mockery, doesn't it?
Also, what about some crystal therapy? You can lay on this bed while he shines lights through your body with various crystals. That's going to set you back a couple $100s though. So, you may just need to take the special water and the flower pills. But this joker was all up on Oprah Winfrey's show, and she could have easily found out what a scam this guy is. It's not even like he's cunningly manipulating people. It's very evident what he's doing. But Oprah is just all too happy to put the idea into your hands that all of this alternative medicine, these weird spiritual practices, she's really into all these spiritual practices. And what's why I think is really interesting is her most favorite one very clearly is the idea of the law of attraction. But like I said earlier, the law of attraction says that if anything bad happens to you, you have co-authored it because you didn't think the right thoughts. So my thought to you is, Oprah, when you decided that you were going to start a school for girls, did you co-author the fact that within the first year, the matron of that school would be abusing the girls in the school and that there would be an enormous bit of drama about the school within the first year? Did you co-author that because you didn't think of the most positive thoughts about the school? You guys, we got to talk about this school because this is one of the points that really frustrated me because it's very difficult to find basic information about what has really happened within the walls of this school. So you know that Oprah wanted to start a school, and she started a school in 2007, I believe it was. And for $40 million, she built a campus to educate about 125 girls. So there's a lot of people who felt that $40 million in South Africa could have gone a lot farther to educate more girls had she not decided to pour into a set of facilities that included a salon, thread count on the sheets at some luxurious amount, just unnecessary elements to make this a luxury experience. And people felt like she should have given her money in a different way. I don't really care about her wanting to make it a nice school because, as she said, you can learn better in a beautiful environment. And I happen to think that's true. Why does everything have to be ugly just for the sake of utility, right? So I'm not even upset that she spent $40 million on it. What I am upset about is that I decided to look at the school as I would look at a school if I were going to send my daughters there, right? So I was looking at the website of this school that she had created, wanting to help these girls in Africa to as she says, pull them up out of poverty and to help them to live a more fulfilled life. And to find girls with what she describes as the it factor. And she wanted to basically be their fairy godmother and bringing them to the school at no expense to them. Let me just say, if you get selected to come to the school, it's free. I don't know how she's going to manage that over long term. But anyway, she begins this school. Now, within the very first year, there's a scandal at the school. The matron of the dormitory has been exploiting some of the girls and abusing them. So the girls come together and expose this woman. When Oprah Winfrey found out that there had been a scandal, she quickly ran to her own website and she wrote a letter where she's apologizing for everything that had happened. And I wish I had the time to read you the whole letter. I implore you to read it yourself. It is some of the most ridiculous foolishness I've ever read, because she continually references different books, self-help books that she read that have gotten her through the crisis of realizing that she had put into position a woman who would then promptly abuse the girls. But the line that really stood out to me as just being like, what are you even saying? She's like, I was devastated about everything that happened. But I pulled myself together after crying for 27 minutes. And I'm like, you knew down to the literal minute how long you were crying over this. I was crying for 27 minutes. What an exact number. What a weird thing to say. But the whole email is so self-aggrandizing, where she's constantly trying to reference all of these spiritual books that she's read, the concepts that basically keep her going, that have led to her to be able to, deal with what it is that she's having to look in the face. Even in this, she's still trying to promote herself and promote herself as a sort of a new kind of guru, somebody who's helped you through life. And look, all of these authors that I've read along the way have really helped me. Flying in the face of this idea that all these same authors who you have consistently told us to read would have said that you are the reason that this horrible thing has happened. You're referencing all of these gurus who have helped you and that's how you're getting through this. Well, how do you rectify the fact that you're only allowed to have good things happen to you because you understand the law of attraction to the nth degree? Okay, but far apart from the fact that just bad things happening at this school have happened consistently, there have been rumors about girls going missing. Those are really hard to confirm online, let me just tell you. I never found any confirmation that I felt was worthy of bringing to you, even though it's a consistent rumor that girls have gone missing. But what isn't a rumor is the fact that one girl, I think it was in 2011, came to school and she had a dead baby in a bag. Apparently she'd had a baby and it was just hanging out in a bag, and it's like, then there have been other documented cases where the other girls are harming each other or taking advantage of each other. It's like there's a lot that's going on at this school that is just not appropriate from the staff, but also amongst the girls themselves, the girl with the pregnancy. It's not a positive environment. But, I thought to myself, well, what are the girls getting here, though? At $40 million to create this institution, and she's set up this endowment so that nobody has to pay. And this is Oprah Winfrey, the billionaire. I mean, certainly she must have a really high idea of what education ought to be. How does this website sort of sell the Oprah Winfrey education experience, this leadership academy? It must be incredible. The curriculum must be so good. And so I went onto the website just to see, as pretending I'm if I was a parent and I was going to send my daughter here, what could I expect? What would her experience be like? You guys, when I tell you that I was literally dropped to the floor in astonishment. When I tell you this is one of the clunkiest websites for a private school I have ever laid my eyes on, and I have looked at so many private schools in sending my children to private schools in Texas, but also here in Washington, D.C., I have run the gamut on every single private school within 50 miles of me. I know what a good school looks like. What a good website looks like. We all do. We're not dimwits. But what I'm saying is and also working in private schools, I know what kind of school I'd work for and what kind of school I wouldn't work for. And when I tell you that I would not only not send my daughter here, I would have nothing to do with an institution this junky. Look at the way they describe themselves on the front page of this website. And granted, we're in South Africa, okay? So my initial thought was, okay, well, they do speak 12 different languages in South Africa, right? I know that English is the language of business and commerce. So initially I was like, well, okay, they speak a lot of different languages. Maybe it's an English translation error. But even so, I even with that caveat, I feel that because Oprah Winfrey was in charge of this, it should be better than this. surely she can afford to hire somebody who can do an amazing web page for the school that doesn't include such descriptions as this. Okay, let me just say, you open up the web page, right? And you get a picture of the graduating class. That's nice. You are first, by the way, confronted by the fact that there's all kinds of fraud and that please be mindful of any emails that come from the school. It could be fraud. So that's the first alert that pops up. But, get that out of the way. And then we see the pictures of the girls at our graduation doing academics the O way. Okay, the O apostrophe way, the Oprah way. And we get some descriptions of what you can expect at this school. Okay, let's talk about sciences. What can we expect as the sciences? This is their blurb, first page, about what you can expect from the sciences. In the 21st century, we find ourselves living in a technological era. We use a variety of machines and gadgets to entertain ourselves and to improve our everyday lives. Cell phones, computers, washing machines, cars with electric windows and automatic gears, and even electric toothbrushes. I'm sorry, what? What does that have to do with anything that I can expect to receive from the school? I certainly will not expect to learn how to write a paragraph that would inform me of anything. Cars with electric windows and even electric toothbrushes. Wow, science. Okay, well, what about mathematics, okay? What can we expect to get from the mathematics department? Mathematics. Contributing to developing South Africa by developing young scientifically minded African women leaders. The teaching of mathematics entails equipping students with the necessary skills, knowledge, beliefs, and values to develop thinking processes that are mathematical. Are you kidding me right now? What is this? What about the arts? Okay, maybe they're just really bad at describing what to do with science or math, but maybe the arts is where they shine. The value of arts education goes further in that it has been shown to assist students in their personal, social, and academic development. How this subject linked to other subject areas? What are they talking about? And this is the description of academics on the first page. This isn't buried somewhere where somebody might not see it. This is on the front page of the website. Okay, but then you keep scrolling down, it passes student affairs, and then after student affairs, which is really just a picture that says student affairs, then we get this weird blurb. It says TIA, trauma-informed approach, in huge letters. Okay? And this is what they want you to know about what you can expect when you come to this school. Okay? Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy is a trauma-informed institution. The primary goal of trauma-informed learning, teaching, and care is to ensure that all services, interventions, and organizational culture and practices are aligned with understanding the impact of trauma across all areas of functioning. The trauma-informed approach supports recovery and aligns organizational culture so that all areas of the organization respond to, quote, to the effects of trauma at all levels, end quote, as opposed to offering interventions or holding practices that are re-traumatizing. I have never seen a school that has so little on the front page to advertise what it's about. But that what they advertise in their academics is so poor as to make you wonder if the person who wrote the blurbs is even familiar with the concept of communicating information. And then to scroll down and see that their kind of mission statement is all about trauma. Now, I understand that a lot of these girls potentially came from traumatic backgrounds because that's kind of the point of the school, is to help girls who maybe didn't have an opportunity but who have the it factor. All these little quote-unquote Oprahs running around that she wants to ensure their safety. But there's nothing on this website that would make you believe this is an institution for learning. In all of its time, it's coming up on the 20-year mark, only one student has received a PhD. So it's not as though they're like sending these girls into the halls of learning to go and do great and mighty things. I'm not saying that having a PhD is like the epitome. I don't even have a secondary degree. So it's totally fine if you don't. But I guess what I'm saying is like to set it up as though these girls like these big leaders, like I can't think of, I have not been able to find one person who has just really changed society on the level that Oprah considers herself to have done. And that did, honestly. And then, of course, we have all of this stuff relating to the fact that Oprah has friends in high places who are nefarious and evil people. Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, P. Diddy, among many, many others. So many celebrities have stories where they don't trust Oprah, they don't like her. And her day in the sun of the early 90s being like the queen is over. But I think it ended when Kitty Kelly's book came out. Because right after her book came out, she closed up shop and wasn't doing her show anymore. And then it was, I'm moving on to the Oprah Network. I've got my Oprah magazine and all this other stuff. It's time for me to retire the show. But I don't think she would have if it hadn't been for this book. And that is why we're going to read this book. Because there's too many questions in my mind about who this fraud is. And how I don't believe how she came up organically. And the sloppiness with which she does her work makes me feel like she is a fraud who's been propped up for decades. And I'm over it. So I'm going to break my rule of not reading any more books because I think the only way for us to find out real answers is if we read Oprah by Kitty Kelly. And I hope you'll join me. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.